And hi, everyone. Gordon Causey here, coming to you live and unscripted as always. On YouTube, my station branded under my own name, as you see it written on the screen. And this is Candy the Wonder Dog. I see that Danny has already shown up. Appreciate you always being here, my friend. Danny is in Montreal, Canada. I myself am in southeastern Ontario, Canada, down in what's called Northumberland County, where I've lived for the last 10 years. Anyway, Candy, sit. Wait, speak, 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 speak. Don't chuff. Oh, there's a bark. And she gets a bacon treat, a cheeseburger bacon treat, the ones that make her go nuts. All right, we are the 8th of March, Saturday, the 8th of March, 2025. It's now 9:46. I actually did get started pretty much right on time. And going to be talking tonight about the Liberal leadership race. By this time tomorrow, we will have the results. It's either 4 or 5 p.m. when the results are coming down for the leadership race. Uh, and I'm here to tell you right now, as it says in the thumbnail for this video, it's going to be Mark Carney. I'm hardly a unique voice in saying that Mark Carney is going to win. And actually, I was reading a CBC News article just before going live, and just to check on when the results would be known. And they're going to be announced probably between 4 and 5 p.m. CBC News will be going live with the results of the leadership race. It's an online vote. And there are already complaints by Liberal Party of Canada members that they're having trouble accessing the system that would allow them to vote on the next leader. And as most will know, the next leader of the Liberal Party, when Justin Trudeau formally resigns, because Justin Trudeau has not yet resigned as leader of the Liberal Party, he has simply stated his intention to resign. And he had said that after a vigorous and thorough leadership race, whatever, that he would then resign leadership of the party. There are all kinds of questions as to how long a turnover would take place. When Paul Martin assumed the leadership from Jean Chrétien, the handover took place over about a month. The expectation that I'm hearing from most political pundits, professors of political science and the like, is a week or so for a transition to take place. And then at that point, once Mark Carney becomes leader of the Liberal Party, he then is vaulted into the position of being Canada's prime minister. However, interestingly, he does not have a seat in the House of Commons. His government would be sitting, but Mark Carney would be leading the party from outside the House of Commons. So further speculation is that, assuming everything goes according to plan and Mark Carney wins and there's a leadership turnover, and Gordana Salkovic is here. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that well or not, but thanks for letting us know. I don't know whether you intended some sarcasm with that. And if you did, that's fine. Most people tuning into my station will be aware of the landscape right now. Koj Malik, who is from the great state of Florida, has joined us. She comes on to a lot of the live streams, as does Danny. Everyone is welcome. The live chat is there to be filled up. If anyone is new to my station and has never encountered me before, Gordon Causey, again, a resident of the province of Ontario, the southeastern corner, about halfway between Kingston and Oshawa, rural farming country. Where I live is big on apple orchards. If you've driven down the 401 heading east toward Kingston out of Oshawa and heading east, as you get in and around the town of Colborne, you'll see the Big Apple, and you're in my neighborhood, more or less. about 15, 20 minutes away from me, maybe 20, 25. Little town called Brighton, only about 15,000 people. I'm a former member of the Canadian Armed Forces, the communications branch, what is known as the Royal Canadian Corps of Signals. I ended my career with the military in June of 2021. And to give you a little bit of a background on the way I approach things, the reason I'm no longer in the military is that I refuse to roll up my sleeve. I'm 58 years of age, born in 1966 in the little town of Port Colborne, Ontario, which is out Welland Way near Niagara Falls, near Crystal Beach. And from there, though, at the tender age of 6 months old, my father was transferred to New York City, and we resided in Staten Island, New York, for about 3 years. And then, after a brief stint back in Canada, he was sent back to the United States. And we resided, I went to kindergarten grades 1, 2, 3, 4 in the great state of New Jersey, where I learned to, where I developed a real nice, I learned how to talk like a good New Yorker, New Jersey, Northern Jersey. And then from there, finished grade 4 in Burlington, Ontario. And then spent 1 year when I went to grade 6 in Portland, Oregon, out on the West Coast. My father worked in the financial industry, worked for one of the 5 big banks. I did a video just, I guess, yesterday talking about the fact that, yes, Canada does restrict, they put prohibited, the Canada's Bank Act has rules and stipulations in place that basically preclude American banks from being able to enter, sorry, I misphrased that preclude American banks from being able to effectively enter the Canadian retail banking industry, the very lucrative retail banking industry. Canada Bank Act basically puts a wall around our banking sector. Anyway, needless to say, I'm an individual who doesn't necessarily go along with the herd. When the COVID era went on, I was gathering. I was meeting in large numbers. I was going to visit and stay at the homes of strangers when we were being told to shelter in place and to avoid all contact outside of your bubble and to follow stickers on the floor and to wear a diaper on your face and all these things. And I was gathering with hundreds of people without masking, without distancing. I didn't get jabbed. And back in 2021, when the jabs were first rolling out in interest, people were losing their minds when they found out I wouldn't take the vaccine. And as time has gone on, some individuals, some, not all, but some have expressed a degree of respect for my forthrightness in refusing to go along with the herd mentality. Somewhat in my nature that when I see everyone being pushed in one direction by media, by government, by politicians, by industry groups, and saying, everyone go in this direction. I'm an individual who often has a tendency to say, you want everyone going left? I'm going to go the opposite way. I'm going to go right. And I have Gordana is saying, not being sarcastic, just wanted to know what's going on. No worries. It's hard to tell with textile messages. Call me being oversensitive. I apologize, but because I know a lot of people are paying hyper close attention. For a lot of people, it's just news on the periphery. They know there's an election coming up for the Liberal leader, but it's background noise. And so fair enough. So tomorrow, 4 or 5 p.m., they'll announce the results of the leadership race. I'm here to tell you it's going to be Mark Carney. I'm even more convinced of that fact, given that They have like a 3 or 4 step process that you have to go through. You have to register as a Liberal Party member, be a card carrying member. Then they send you a pin. You need to register, and then you have to register again. It's like a 3, 4 step process. And they're, according to CBC News, they've been contacted by dozens. That's their term. Could be hundreds for all we know. What does dozens mean? Dozens of Liberal Party members who are saying that they have been unable to access the voting system. And so that has me more convinced than ever that it's Mark Carney. He is going to win. This is not a leader. I've been saying from the very beginning, if you check my previous videos, a day or two before Trudeau resigned, I said, here's what's going to happen. He's going to resign. It's not going to be right away. I nailed it. Look back on my videos back in January. I got everything right, all the ticks in the boxes. However, not to toot my own horn too loudly, I wasn't the only one saying it. It was that obvious that Trudeau was going to leave, that he wasn't going to resign until a new leader had been picked. And I said I don't think I said that it would be Mark Carney. I waited until a few days later and I said, forget it. This is a coronation. Mark Carney is going to win. We'll see if that prediction comes through. I get a lot of things right. I get things wrong too, though. Let me see what's being written on the live chat. Danny saying the black sheep, like he and I, refusing the jab. When we were all told the programming that we were being given by the nightly news, by the political class, by experts in the medical field, was that this was, was going to be a winter of death for the unvaccinated. Remember that? I'm alive and kicking, and everyone I know who refused the jab, we're all alive and kicking. I'm a contrarian thinker. That means I think independently from the mob. I just don't, I question things. I got some blowback the other night because this trade war that is looming between Canada and the US, I'm not on board with it. I'm not on board with the Canadian reaction to it. I'm not on board with this rah Canada stuff. I am a patriotic Canadian. I serve my country. Played hockey even when I lived in the United States, when I lived in New Jersey and Portland, Oregon. In New Jersey, I played in the Passac Valley Hockey Association. Look it up if you want. We played out of Westwood, New Jersey. The team I played for was the Westwood Whites. I still have a trophy from back in that era, the early 1970s. And then when I played in Oregon, when we moved to Oregon, I played hockey there as well. Interestingly, most of the guys playing hockey down in New Jersey and in Oregon were either expatriate Canadians like myself, Canadian-born citizens, or American-born kids who were born in the United States to American parents. And I've got, I'm just going to go through what is being said in the chat. This is what I do. I love the interaction. If you agree with me on anything, go ahead and say so. But if you disagree, please fill it up, especially if you disagree. The biggest problem I think we have in today's world is that everyone is in their echo chambers and we don't hear the opposing side. And I regularly seek to go outside of my echo chamber. I am, by the standards of today, I'm regarded as being something of a conservative. What's ironic is that I don't feel like I've changed my general worldview from, say, 15, 20 years ago. And back 15, 20 years ago, I was a liberal. Now the ground has shifted under my feet, and now all of a sudden I find myself being labeled a conservative. Whatever the case. I'm going to get into a lot of things about this, about what's going on, because there's so many different ways that this can play out. There are individuals suggesting that Justin Trudeau may actually attempt to hold on to the leadership of the Liberal Party even after the election takes place tomorrow, the leadership race. And you can frame it as an election, but I think a leadership race is a better way of terming it. And that he could conceivably try to hold on. I would be very surprised, incredibly surprised, but not, it wouldn't knock me off my chair. Given the times that we're living in, pretty much there's very little that would shock me to the point where I'd fall down. I would be surprised, wow, he's really going to try and hang on. We'll see. But do not expect tomorrow to have it announced that Canada has a new prime minister. That, assuming Justin Trudeau follows through on his commitment to actually resign, because back in January, when he made his announcement, it was his intention to resign. But we should note, it was also his intention to balance the books during his first term, and we all know that was a crock. It was his intention to deliver government with integrity, and then we know that he interfered in a criminal proceeding with his corporate buddies at SNC-Lavalin, and then fired Canada's Attorney General, our top lawyer, basically, fired her for not giving his buddies what's referred to as a deferred prosecutorial agreement, a plea bargain. Give them, pay a fine and everything's okay. Keep, business as usual. He accepted gifts from the Aga Khan, whose charity receives money from the government of Canada. He broke so many ethics laws. And Mr. Blackface, who couldn't remember how many times he's put on blackface. When he was caught the first time, he said, no, it was just one time. And Canadians were a forgiving lot. We said, well, we all do stupid things when we're teenagers, when we're kids. Hell, when I was 14, I mooned. I did a public mooning. That's, do I regret it? Yeah, I wish I hadn't done it, but nah, I was a kid. It's the only time I did it, though. Trudeau said he only did the blackface thing once. Yeah, you found that video of me all blacked up. Yeah, that I did it, but I only did it once, he said. And then they found at least 2 other incidents, one at the school when he was an adult, not just a stupid teenager, and more. Another picture or video. There were 3 instances now, and they asked him. They said, you said it was just once. Now we found 2 more. How many times have you done this? And he said, I can't tell you. I don't know the exact number, which says to me and any reasonable person that he did it so many times that he can't even put a number on it. So this is the man who's, he said it's in his intention to resign. We will see, if that plays out in the coming weeks. And goodness knows, look at the looming trade war we have with the United States and the manner in which Canada's, and there are so many things that the government of Canada, and in particular, the premiers are doing that, to my mind, they could constitute what is referred to in legal terms as a casus or casus belli, which is a cause for war, a declaration of war. Eby, the premier of BC, there's speculation that the government of British Columbia is going to impose tolls, perhaps, on trucks looking to travel from Washington State through BC and then onto the Alaskan Panhandle Highway up to Alaska, denying American truckers access to their own country, or at least placing a barrier to them accessing, placing onerous tolls on them. How will that be received in Washington? We're a 90-pound weakling. The United States has an economy that's more than 10 times greater than our own. And we just had sand kicked in our face. And now we're puffing out our chest and we're going to hit you back hard. I think this is going according to script. Let's see what is being written, because there is a lot. Danny is writing that it's a selection, not an election. I frame it as a coronation, selection, whatever you like. Gordana is saying, I am so happy you did not get vaccinated. She did. I'm assuming Gordana is that you're feminine. And It's one of the greatest, one of the best things I think that Trump has done. Trump is a polarizing figure. And I divorce the individual and his personality from policy. And I like the policy of declaring that in the United States, there are two genders. I wish we would do it here in Canada. If Joe Biden had done it, I would have liked it. If Barack Obama had done it, I would have liked it. If Bill Clinton, if George Bush, I don't care about the personality of the individual putting forth sound, rational policy, especially when it endorses the basic fabric of reality. There are two genders, male, female, end of story. Anyway, uh, and I get a lot of people on my station who are unvaxxed, unjabbed, and a few who felt they had no other choice because the government pretty much basically forced them to either get the jab or you're out of a job. And not everyone was in a position where they felt they could say no. And so a lot of people rolled up their sleeves due to what I consider to be heinous and what should be illegal coercion. Canada's a signatory to something called the Nuremberg Code. And we know that after World War II, that the Germans during that era, that they had conducted medical experiments and forced individuals to take medical interventions against their will. And so the Nuremberg Code said that in terms of medical interventions, that there must be informed consent, meaning that individuals are given all the information, not just a portion, all the information, and then they have to agree, absent coercion, like, well, if you don't take it, you can't get onto an airplane or a train, you can't travel, they're not going to let you work if you do not get this intervention that we are mandating on you. That's what we were living through in Canada under Justin Trudeau. And I'm here to tell you right now that when Mark Carney takes over, assuming there's a reasonably smooth transition, Trudeau does abide by his commitment to, his intention to resign the leadership of the Liberal Party, hand things over to Mark Carney, because that's who it's going to be. Assuming all that happens, I'm here to tell you that Mark Carney is just a better dressed, normal sock wearing, more articulate version of Justin Trudeau. They have the same policies. Mark Carney has been an advisor to the Liberal Party of Canada for the last 3-4 years. He's all in on climate change. He's all in on, impoverishing Canadians to make the weather gooder. He's all in on it. That was his role, his primary role with the UN. He left his job as governor of the Bank of Canada, went to become governor of the Bank of England. He's given, he guided the Britain through its, Brexit period when the British voted to leave the European Union. However, talk to British people about the inflation he unleashed on that country as just, it's called quantitative easing. It's a nice way of saying print more money. He's print more money, Mark Carney. Quantitative easing. What's the quantity? The quantitative part is the increase in the money supply. The easing is the easing of restrictions that limit the amount of currency being flooded into the marketplace. It's a branding statement. If they said, well, we're going to print more money, that would affect the psychology of the marketplace and the psychology of consumers and individual citizens. And so rather they stick this fancy label on it, quantitative easing. And anyway, let's catch up with the chat. Danny is writing to buy whatever you want or need, period. No matter country of origin. That's the way I've been operating the last few days. However, since leaving the military in June of 2021, In February of 2022, I started working at a large retail establishment. And for the last several days, I've been having to deal with I call them the sticker on the floor people, the ones who would, follow religiously the stickers on the floor like it was going to save their lives, and would get mad if anyone didn't follow. He's not following the stickers. He's going to kill us all. I mean, the insanity we went through, but there is a mindset involved in people who will comply with just about anything. And so and you're seeing it in spades now. The same individuals who couldn't wait to put on a mask, put on a face diaper, couldn't wait to follow the stickers, who got lined up to get a roll up their sleeves and then got booster, booster, booster. There are individuals who love following the rules and don't bother to think. And I mentioned this many times on my station. The way that propaganda works is it tries to drive an emotional response. And the reason it does that is because when an individual is in an emotional state, their higher thought process, where the frontal lobes of the brain, where our higher thought processes take place, critical thinking, well, it basically shuts down. And we retreat back into what they refer to as the mammalian brain that we share with dogs and other mammals, and fight or flight. And that's what we get reduced to. And there are a lot of people who succumb very easily to propaganda. And so the nightly news has been drilling it into them that we're heading to a scary time, and this is a trade war. They're framing it as a war. And Doug Ford is going. He's been, I think, on every major network. I just watched an interview he did on CBS News. I think he's been on CNN. He's probably been on Fox. He's been on all of them, and he's doing a good job. He's playing his role very well. He's got a very folksy charm to him. The old Doug Ford's an old high school drug dealer, and if you don't believe me, just do some Googling on that. You'll find uh, anyone who lived in Etobicoke and is around my age, 58 years of age, which is around the same age that Dougie is, uh, knows that out of a retail convenience store plaza in Etobicoke, he and his brothers Randy and Robbie, Randy, and Dougie, sounds like the Trailer Park Boys, doesn't it? Although their dad was an incredibly wealthy business owner who was a big time contributor to the local police. And so they ran drugs out of this, mostly hashish, out of back in the days when it was illegal. Even kidnapped a kid because the kid owed them. He was dealing for them, and he owed them $10,000, so they kidnapped him. This is who our premier is, Doug Dealer Dougie. Anyway, that's enough of that. What? And Koji Malik said, you have decided to check a box. I'm not sure exactly what you mean, Koji Malik. Decide to check a box. I talk about the fact often that I am the poster child, a little bit old to be a poster child, but the poster child for cancel culture, because I'm an old Christian, white, straight male. And so in today's culture, if you want to have a voice in the public square, what they're looking for is disabled Aboriginal females with a transgender sexual identity or something along those lines. And then you get to be front and center. You get your voice heard in the public square. Beautiful thing about YouTube is even an old fart like me, poster child man for cancel culture, can regardless inject himself into the public discourse, throw myself out there. I have a very dressed down presence on YouTube. I don't have any production values. I don't have a staff. I'm not Joe Rogan by any stretch of the imagination. I'm about as far away from a Joe Rogan or a Dave Rubin or a Young Turks or any of these types of individuals, PBD. I'm about as far away from that as you can possibly be. It's me sitting at my dining table. The light is the dining room light. And the microphone is what I get, and the camera is what I get on my laptop. And that's the production. I like it that way. And the reason I like it that way is because I hope it speaks to a level of authenticity. I hope it speaks to the fact that I'm just an ordinary, average individual with a unique, a unique life experience. We all have unique life experiences, but sometimes, having spent close to 10 years growing up in the United States, growing up, going to grades kindergarten 1, 2, 3, 4, and grade 6, and saying, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with justice and liberty for all. Saying that every day, and having something of an American frame of reference, but only up until the age of 12. And since then, when we moved back to Canada in 1978 permanently, the summer I was turning 12, when we moved back permanently, I was more or less Americanized, and I did not appreciate everything that Canada had to offer. And over the ensuing 40 years, I have grown a deep appreciation for my country, recognizing its flaws and its strengths. Likewise, I can look at the United States, and there are some things I absolutely love about the United States. And I can also recognize the flaws because I have a different experience. I have perspective, a differing perspective than a lot of Canadians and a lot of Americans. And incidentally, for anyone, if you're new here, I will invite you to hit the like and the subscribe button. Tomorrow, I'm going to be talking to a gentleman, who I grew up with in New Jersey. We were best friends way back, 73, 74, 75. Best of friends. Hung out together all the time at that age. And with the Facebook era, we found each other on Facebook. I think I reached out to him and I said, "Hey, you still remember me, David?" And he's, "Yeah, I still remember you." And we end up talking on the phone. Well, anyway, he's going to be joining me tomorrow. And we're going to be talking about the current, U.S.-Canada relations from the perspective of two guys who went to public school together all the way back. David no longer lives in New Jersey. He lives in Texas. I'm anxious to hear if he's got a southern drawl at all, or, I don't know the difference. I got one southern accent, and that's for Alabama, Tennessee, Arkansas, Louisiana, Texas. That's my standard southern accent. But I know there's differing accents in the United States. I love digressing, by the way. Let's see what's happening. And Danny, with respect to the sands shifting under, classic liberals are now conservatives, because classical liberalism holds free speech as a virtue, but the liberal left now wants to put restrictions on free speech. What? Since when did liberals want to clamp down on free speech? It's all about what is being spoken. I am something of a free speech absolutist, to the extent that, freedom of expression. When Canadians at the Ottawa trucker convoy, I was out on the overpass. I never made it to Ottawa myself. I was out on the highway. I had a Canada flag on a stick, right side up, because being ex-military, I know what flying a flag upside down means. It is a signal for distress. I'm in distress. And I don't like to signal distress. I like to signal strength. And so it bothered me to see the Canadian flag flying upside down. At the same time, would I ban it? No. It's expression. I did tell individuals, I would prefer it. I don't like seeing people fly the flag upside down. And the reason is, and I would explain the reasons why. And I had it happen a couple times. People said, "Fair, I appreciate your point of view." And they switched it. Others said, "Yeah, but this is the way I feel." And fair enough. Free speech, freedom of expression. And you have decided to check a box. What box did I check? You're throwing me off here, Koji Malik. John 5 has shown up. So Trudeau is saying Mr. Polyev does not have a clearance check. I'm wondering if Mr. Carney did his check. Yes, Mark Carney has apparently received his security clearance. Something incidentally, I had to get a top secret security clearance because my last posting, well, it wouldn't have mattered. I used to work in communication centers. And in a communication center, even though I was very junior level, my, pieces of paper could come across my hands. I could pull something off the printer. I could see a message being sent across the system that was top secret. So I had to have that clearance so that my eyes could see it. And it was an interesting process getting my security clearance because I swear to goodness I had a CSIS, Canadian Security and Intelligence Services employee, agent, whatever the case, sitting. I was in Quebec City at the time, and he was going through a long list, a questionnaire. He must have asked me 40, 50 questions, typically yes, no, and he got to one question. I told him about my background, where I'd grown up, the moving back and forth between the US and all that. And he's like, okay, fine. And then he was going through the questions. And one of the questions was, he said, have you ever sworn fidelity or allegiance to a foreign government or power? And thought about it for about a nanosecond. I said, yes. And I think he had already ticked off no on the sheet because he was just get the next one done. And his head shot up and he goes, you have? I said, I told you, grades 1, 2, 3, 4, 6. I was living in the United States every day. You say, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands. And he looked down at the sheet and he looked at me and he goes, that doesn't count. Look, okay, but I told you. Anyway, let's see what's being said. Sharon Fleming is here and is saying they only think they are choosing. Yeah, it's an illusion. And it really struck me when there are Liberal Party members who are trying to access the voting system and are being locked out of it. And we'll see what happens, because what will happen in a leadership race when Trudeau announced that they were going to have a leadership race, the Liberal Party membership at that point was about 300,000. I checked. Now it's around 400,000. And what will happen is Mark Carney, Chrystia Freeland, and the other two individuals running will go out and they will try to sign up members before there's a cutoff date. And I forget when the cutoff date was, but they'll go out and they'll try and sell memberships to individuals who are going to vote for them. And at times that can be called stacking the convention. And if Chrystia Freeland, for example, was very successful and was signing up tens of thousands of individuals to vote in the leadership race, well, that would increase her chances of winning. But now, CBC says it's quote unquote dozens. But having lived through the COVID era and having been at gatherings where there were probably 3,000 or 4,000 people protesting the lockdowns and the stupid mandates and the forced vaccinations. And then you would read about the reporting in the paper and they would say, a Peterborough rally had over 100. It's like there were 3,000, 4,000, maybe 5. We were in the thousands and they reported over 100. They're not lying. It is over 100, but they diminished it by the way they frame it. Yeah, it is over 100, like 20 times, 30 times, 40 times more than 100. Instead of dozens, they'll say, a few. And then the flip side of that is that they want to build up numbers, then they report it in a fashion that makes a small number seem much larger. The crowd swelled. It was well over 200. And how many people were there? 202, 203, maybe. John saying, is that clearance check a big deal? what can happen is if Pierre Poilievre or anyone has the security clearance done and then accesses confidential secret information, then they're not allowed to talk about it. And that's been Poilievre's excuse, is that he doesn't want to be handcuffed verbally from commenting on certain things. And I think the optics of it aren't the best. But as things stand right now, if you give me a choice between Mark Carney, I mean, this is the thing with Mark Carney. Mark Carney lied to Canadians already. He hasn't even been elected as anything yet, and he's already started lying. He told the world, told Canadians, that his company, that he was chairman of the board. He was on the board of directors, not just on the board, but the chairman or chair of the board for Brookfield Asset Management, which is a large property development company. Assets all over the world, Toronto, Montreal, New York. And they moved their corporate headquarters from, I forget whether it was Toronto or Montreal, but I think it was Toronto. They moved from Canada down to New York City, down to Trump's old stomping grounds. And that transfer took place in December. And so they asked Mark Carney, they said, why was your company, you're chairman of the board, and it moved down? And he said, that was done after I left. And we found out later that the decision, the board voted on moving down to the United States, not in December. That was when the move was enacted. The vote took place all the way back in October when Mark Carney was still chairman of the board. Liar. But should we expect anything different? And I think there are polls out now suggesting that there had been something of a honey period. Mark Carney, governor of the Bank of Canada, governor of the Bank of England, top advisor at the UN for climate change. Oh, this guy sounds good. Maybe, and there's been a concerted effort by the Liberals and by their media mouthpieces to align Pierre Poilievre with Donald Trump. And now with this looming trade war and everyone across the board, even drug dealer Dougie Ford, are all saying the same thing, that, Trump is evil. Trump is, Doug Ford doesn't go and say he's evil. He just says he's wrong. And, this is not on the American people. This is on Donald Trump, et cetera, et cetera. But I'm hearing it every day now from when I'm at work in a retail establishment with a large number of customers coming in, and Trump is evil. This Trump derangement syndrome has become an epidemic in Canada. And Canadians need to understand something, that Donald Trump has a large degree of what is referred to in political science circles as political capital. He has a lot of a business term that you write on a balance sheet is goodwill. And then they try to assign a dollar value to goodwill. Well, right now, Donald Trump has a lot of political capital. He has a lot of goodwill built up with the broader American populace. Not saying everyone. There are people with Trump derangement syndrome on steroids in the US. But there's probably in and around half the population, and probably just a bit more, who are willing to give him, even if they feel, well, maybe this trade war thing isn't a good idea, they're going to give Trump the benefit of the doubt. Well, let's see how this plays out. Let's see what the end game is. Trump has a reputation as being a deal maker, master negotiator. So we'll see where things go. Let's keep going through the messages. Eat Me is saying Trudeau cried, as he said, last address to the nation, thinks he knows that vacationing on the arms of the population is over. Trudeau will not be hurting. His net worth has skyrocketed over his last 10 years since he became prime minister. He came into the office of prime minister. His dad left him a nice trust fund, somewhere in the millions of dollars, and he's grown that exponentially. How exactly? I'm not there tonight. I mean, Trudeau is as crooked as the day is long in my book. And so, and I can tell you this right now, for the drama of it, just for the pure entertainment value, I would actually like to see him try and hang on. I would love to see him say, I've changed my mind, I'm not going to resign. And Canadian taxpayers just subsidized a liberal leadership race. And I know some liberals will, and no, that was paid out of party money. And that's true. However, whenever you donate money to a political party in Canada, you get a 75% tax credit direct. So if you give the Liberal Party of Canada $1,000, you get $750 back when you file your return. And so it is anything, any party activities, and it doesn't matter, Liberal, NDP, Conservative, Green, any political activities that take place are all taxpayer subsidized, not paid for by taxpayers, but subsidized by taxpayers by virtue of the fact that donations to political parties up to a certain dollar amount, I think it's $1,500, I might be wrong. I can never get to that level myself. I have donated to political parties in the past, but not for a long time. Up to a certain dollar amount, you get 75% of your donation back in the form of a direct tax credit. Let's see. Can I keep going? How do you know when Danny's repeating the repeated joke? How do you know when Trudeau's lying? His lips move. Eat Me is writing, we are done footing his grocery bills and surfing trips to Tofino. No kidding. Eat Me saying, greetings to everyone. Koji Malik is saying, Canada's supposed to use every tool that we should be using, every tool at our disposal. I disagree. When Trump brings in tariffs on goods being imported into the United States from Canada or anywhere else, that will be inflationary for US consumers. Doesn't affect Canada at all. Everyone has been saying, why is Trump putting these tariffs in on the American side? They're saying these tariffs are going to be inflationary. Trump promised to, restore inflation to what it was during his first term, down around 1%, 1.5%. And these moves, a lot of people, not everyone, but a lot of people are saying these are going to be inflationary. And it's easy to understand why, because companies, individuals, importing firms bringing products into the United States then have to turn around and whatever the dollar value of the imported goods is, say it's $1 million, and they have to give $250,000 to Washington. So that's going to increase costs in the United States. It doesn't affect Canada. It's not inflationary in Canada. I swear to goodness, our retaliatory tariffs are almost like Trudeau and Mark Carney and the rest saying, hey, we want to have inflation in Canada too. Let's do reciprocal tariffs. And that way we get to have inflation. Because by having reciprocal tariffs, what happens is when Canadian companies import from the United States, which is a major component of things that we import, the United States is Canada's biggest trading partner. I don't think Canada is the United States' biggest trading partner. I think the United States has a larger trading relationship with China, and likewise, maybe even Europe as well. I think we're third. But for Canada, our single largest trading relationship is with the United States. And so if we start placing tariffs on everything being brought into Canada, well, it's going to drive inflation through the roof. So we get to have inflation too. Thanks a lot, liberals. And for what it's worth, I don't hear, it's like the COVID era. It's like the COVID era when everyone was singing from the same songbook that if you don't get vaccinated, it's going to be a winter of death, and you got to follow the stickers on the floor, and you can't gather, and you can't have you can't have friends over in your backyard, or we're going to call the Gestapo on you. This is what we had to endure. And now it's the same group think that's happening with respect. It's programmed think. You tune into the television, listen to the political talking heads, listen to the media, listen to the so-called experts. The only thing is, this is the way they do it. They did it during the COVID era. The media only presents one side of the argument. They won't talk to any of the economists and experts who are suggesting that Canada not retaliate, because we have to all be like-minded. You will be assimilated. Resistance is futile. I'm going to resist. And there are a lot of Canadians. I'm not unique. There are a lot of Canadians who are, and I speak to them. This is not just online. I spoke to a gentleman today. I said, you're looking for I know him, but I said, you're looking for the red Canadian flag on the president. He's like, no, I don't care. And God bless you, sir, because I don't care either. I'm doing what I did the whole time. Gordana's writing that she understands what I'm saying. Unfortunately, Mark Carney, as we know, he is a globalist. Yes, he's attached to the WEF. He's big on the climate change narrative and these SDGs, otherwise known as the Sustainable Development Goals. The WEF and the UN have partnered together to sell this agenda of a great reset and the need to put the planet on a sustainable path, and that we have 8 billion people on the planet and that we're consuming too much, and the world doesn't have enough resources. And teaching it's a message of scarcity, and I'm here to tell you, based on my Christian faith, yeah, scarcity is the language of the enemy. And I know I'll have a few people at this point going, oh my gosh, he's one of those Bible people. Oh, forget it, tap out. And I get that. I get that. I could almost probably do an hour-long video just talking about my rationale behind viewing this world as having enormous abundance that we haven't even tapped into. And there are academic voices who suggest that as well. However, they're not given a seat at the table. When the International Panel for Climate Change, IPCC, is doling out its it's got billions of dollars that it's doling out. They don't give any money to any research unless it's proving, quote unquote, proving climate change or anthropogenic, man-made climate change. Climate changes, we all know that. And then puppets of going on. Gordana goes on to say, puppet of Klaus Schwab, and I live that far from St. Kitts. Oh, very good. So you live near the area where I was born, Welland County. Brian Beattie is here. 2/3 of liberals were kicked out of voting. Will liberals stop the election? It's interesting. Could Trudeau use that as a pretext? I'm for the sheer entertainment value. I would like nothing better than to see Justin Trudeau say, under some excuse, to find some rationale to hold on to the leadership. You'll remember at the end of last year, he was doing an interview with Michael Critch of This Hour Has 22 Minutes. And he was telling him that his intention was to run in the next election. Michael Critch said something to the effect of, it was X number of years ago that your dad went for a walk in the snow and decided it was time to pack it in. And then he looked and said, it's snowing outside. And then Justin Trudeau said, when my father was the age that I am now, he still had 12 more years to go as Prime Minister of Canada. Trudeau didn't want to go. He was more or less pushed. But at the same time, he hasn't resigned. He could have resigned. And then handed the reins over to an interim leader. They would have had the senior executive of the Liberal Party of Canada. They would have appointed an interim leader who would then be Prime Minister while a leadership race took place. Could have done that, but he didn't. He magnanimously said, I will stay on. Continue what I've always done, putting Canada first because I'm such a great guy. Oh, I hate his phony, empathy voice. He's such a fraud. He's such a total fraud. And Mark Carney, well, they moved Brookfield. We moved the head office was moved to New York after I'd left the company. And we find out, no, you lied to us, Mark. And I think that's going to have an impact. I hope it does. So I have Brian Beattie saying that 2/3 of liberals were kicked out of voting. That's not what I read in the crappy CBC propagandistic media, and I went through it yesterday, how they lie repeatedly. They did an article yesterday suggesting that Donald Trump is spouting misinformation, fact checking them and saying it's false, that Canada doesn't restrict US banks from operating in Canada. And in their own About That news piece, they have a current affairs program called About That. And the newscaster or whatever, the guy who is reading the script, he said, in point of fact, it's factually true that we do restrict American banks from operating in Canada, and we do that by requiring any bank, Bank of America wants to open a retail branch subsidiary in Yonge and Dundas in Toronto, they can, but they're not allowed to have any customers who unless they deposit $150,000 or more. So you have to be able to put 150 grand in the bank with an American bank, which basically shuts them out of the incredibly lucrative retail banking market in Canada. And so, well, what's the point in opening up there? We can't make any money at it. They have this stupid rule for American banks that doesn't exist for Canadian banks. So it's pointless. They make it prohibitive. You can do it if you're willing to open up a branch and then never make a dime in profit and just lose money. So none do it. Surprise, surprise. Danny's writing, it is common sense. There are only two sexes, male and female. Yeah. And I have a new makeup junkie. I signed up to vote for anyone but Carney. I did all the necessary steps, but still can't vote. We all know it's fixed. And thank you, makeup junkie. There's a reason I like putting this out under my own name, though. I know we all have these names. I really appreciate those individuals who are willing to put out their own name. And I don't mean that as a rub. I understand that I'm not meaning that to denigrate anyone who uses a username. There are a number of them on here: whale oil beef, eat me, etc. Sharunian. I have a large number of subscribers who use usernames. I just appreciate, I know it takes some gravitas to put your name out there. YouTube almost discourages it. Protect your privacy. I'd rather put my name out there. So I'm not some anonymous individual. Did Gordon Causey serve in the Canadian Armed Forces? Check me out. Well, I don't know where it is. There it is. Just want to cover up my service number. Gotta look. My DEU's dress uniform, my veteran card, but I would just want to cover up my. There I am. Just want to cover up my service number. You have that for life. Anyway, Rick is saying that Canada's finished. I think we have very much the real potential, and I'm not making this as a prediction, just that if things go down this way, it wouldn't surprise me if the United States said you're restricting, you're embargoing nickel, which is vital to the arms industry in the United States of America, because it was, according to Doug Ford, during his interview with CBS. China does not sell high-grade nickel that is used in the arms industry to the United States of America, and that makes sense. Why would they? China is in competition with the United States to be the preeminent military power in the world. So why would China sell a vitally important mineral or ore to a country with which it is competing? And so the United States gets its high-grade nickel from Ontario. And Doug Ford is now saying he's going to embargo it. He's going to stockpile it. He's not going to send it to the United States. And I could see that as being I said it before, casus belli, a cause for war. The United States, says it's in our, national security. It's in the interest of national security. Protecting the United States of America, we have to occupy Canada to secure access to vitally important, highly enriched nickel for our arms manufacturing industry. We have the Premier of Alberta, or not Alberta, rather British Columbia, Eby, saying that there's potential they may be putting hefty tolls on U.S. truckers looking to go from Washington State up the Panhandle to Alaska. That could be seen as, if the United States wants to place tariffs on foreign-based goods coming into their country, it's a foreign country. We're not the 51st state. It's their country. If they want to build up their steel industry, if they want to make nickel mining in the United States more lucrative and more attractive so that they can get some more mines going. They have one called Eagle Mining in Michigan, but they also have proven nickel reserves in Minnesota. However, it's possible that there could be nickel reserves elsewhere, but why even look for them? Why even do the assaying and the discovery work when it's nigh on impossible to, for the last 20, 30, 40 years, it's been basically impossible to get a nickel mine started in the United States because of all the bureaucratic and environmental regulations. Well, now, necessity is the mother of all invention. If you have to have something, it's amazing what can happen to these regulations. See what Danny's writing. Is there any candle left for Pierre to save? We'll find out. The most popular prognostication I see going out now is that Carney wins tomorrow, 4 or 5 o'clock. We'll find out that Mark Carney has won the leadership race. We'll probably find out. There'll probably be rumors circulating around that, hundreds of, or maybe thousands of Liberal Party card-carrying members were unable to vote. And this is a party that allowed 14-year-olds to vote. And in fairness, I am aware that the Conservative Party of Canada, the NDP, that they also, when they have a leadership vote, that they allow teenagers to vote in their leadership elections as well. However, this isn't just an election for the party leader. This is also an election for the Prime Minister of Canada. And so the Liberals could have tightened up the rules. They could have made it more restrictive. I don't think they did enough. That's my opinion. I don't think they should have been allowing 14-year-olds. Do you think Chrystia Freeland is going around and caring whether or not a kid even knows who the head of state of Canada is? I did a short video a while ago with a quiz, a civics quiz, and asking the question, does a law become law in Canada? Does it require Justin Trudeau's signature? I think it was true or false. Before a law can become a law in Canada, it requires the signature of the Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau. Is that true or false? And it's false. The individual who has to sign legislation is the Governor General as the representative of the Crown. It's referred to as royal assent. I don't think most teenagers know that, and I don't think Chrystia Freeland or any of the other candidates running for the leadership care if they can get a kid, 14, 15 years old, to vote for them. If they know more about Game of Thrones than they do about the Canadian political system, who cares? Just vote for me. Anyway, Gordana is from Croatia. You talk about a political, that's the former Yugoslavia, Bosnia, Herzegovina, Croatia, Serbia, Montenegro. That when Tito died, he was a strongman dictator who was able to keep that all these varying factions. When you get into Eastern Europe, areas like the Balkans, and we're seeing it now in Ukraine and Russia, that there are hatreds that are based on language, territory, religion, ethnicity. There are so many, and these hatreds go back generationally. And don't worry about with the problem spelling Gordano. I usually can make out, everyone makes typos, including, and I'm as guilty as anyone. The Ford sold hash. That was their major commodity. Of course, we also know that Robbie Ford, he liked the crack. He liked his Coke. And I don't know if they dealt in that as well, but it wouldn't surprise me. Eat Me's writing, Pierre supports Ukraine. Not sure anyone is left to save Canada in the political cast. And that, Eat Me was writing that at Danny, but it's for everyone. It's like there's one narrative. It's everyone's joined together, left, right, NDP, Liberal, Conservatives are speaking with one voice, the same way they were speaking pretty much with one voice during the COVID era. Who was standing up for the truckers and the people going to Ottawa in February 2022? I didn't see Pierre Poilievre. I saw Pierre Poilievre at one time went out and met with some, but it was almost like he felt compelled to do it because he's got to stay in touch with his base. But he was not nearly loud and outspoken enough. And everything during COVID, it was all one voice. What are we hearing now? All one voice. And that's when you have to be worried, when the messaging is the same and it's coming from every strata, from, quote unquote experts, from the political class, and, whether elected politicians or bureaucrats, like Bob Ray, he's a bureaucrat, he's ambassador. I think he's our ambassador to the UN. They're all singing from the same songbook. And of course, the media. If they're all saying the same thing, that's the time you have to go, especially listen for the same language, the same messaging, the same talking points. This is a trade war. This is a trade war. How about trade dispute? Well, that's not as good. That's not as inflammatory. That's not going to drive an emotional response. Trade war, economic upheaval, this type of language gets people emotionally engaged. And again, that shuts down the higher thought processes. It reduces or eliminates the ability to think critically and gets people to act just like cattle, just like sheep. Moo, which way do you want me to go? Come on, everyone, let's go in this direction. Everyone, follow the stickers on the floor. I like that metaphor, obviously. Danny is saying that we need to stop funding Ukraine now. No kidding. That's their biz. You guys fight it out. Ukrainian, that's their fight. And there's another policy area where I'm in agreement with Donald Trump. Humanitarian side of him, is saying, I just want the fighting to stop. Who doesn't want the fighting to stop? The arms industry. They're not going to be too thrilled with Trump over what's going on in Ukraine, trying to limit Ukraine's ability to wage war with Russia. If that war comes to a peaceful conclusion, however, Ukraine cedes territory, whatever, well, then there's no more fighting. There's no more bombs dropping. There's no more drones. That's money. HM is here. Good evening. I am beginning to think Carney, Polyev, and Singh all belong to the Uniparty. When they all talk about Ukraine, and they're all singing from the same songbook, when we talk about this trade dispute, this little trade dispute between Canada and the US, imagine that. I'm framing it as a little trade dispute. Heads will explode. I used to refer to the SARS-CoV-2 and the coronavirus. I would used to say the mostly benign coronavirus, or the mostly benign, and people's heads were exploding. Yeah, I write a blog, or I used to. I wrote a lot of blog pieces at that time, and I kept referring to it as the mostly benign little coronavirus, contradicting the messaging. So rather than a trade war, a little trade dispute. Hey, you want to slap tariffs on our stuff? You want to build up your steel industry, your aluminum industry? You want to perhaps find some alternative sources for high-grade nickel within the borders of your own country? Hey, God bless you. Go ahead. It's going to be inflationary for you, perhaps, at least according to a lot of economists. They think it'll be inflationary, at least in the short term. But if you're willing to bear that, hey, that's your biz. We're not going to retaliate because we don't want to drive inflation in Canada. Cost of living here is high enough already with the carbon tax slated to go up again on April 1st, I think it is. We're going to see our costs go up again. We don't want to add to that. We don't want to heap more pain and misery on Canadian consumers, so we're not going to retaliate. Oh no, you're imposing tariffs to drive inflation in the United States? Well, we want inflation in Canada too. It's not high enough yet. It's unreal. Koji Malik, you have to be charismatic, but people who aren't will say those people get preference. Fair enough. I've got low moral fiber. I believe I've seen you before. Thank you for sharing that authenticity and your always valuable opinion and point of view. Greetings from Costa Rica. And sorry for my bad English. Hey, my Espanol muy poquito. But all I have is Feliz Año Nuevo. Cerveza, por favor. ¿Dónde está el baño? My Spanish is not very good. Your English is far better than my Spanish. My second language is French. But great to have you on here, Low Moral Fiber. And I appreciate the fact that we have people from all over the world. I've got people who watch my stream. I'm not a big channel. I don't have tens of thousands or followers. I'm a guppy in the ocean. That's the YouTube space. 1,100, a little more than 1,100. And I appreciate everyone who subscribes. And I hope you enjoy this format, which is basically, I call it freewheeling or freestyling, just going with the flow, talking about what everyone else wants to talk about, giving up my thoughts, views, and perspectives, my opinions. And appreciate everyone signing or joining in and hitting the like button. That helps the algorithms. Subscriptions help build your exposure. Get my voice, and even if you disagree with me, I actually appreciate it when you disagree with me. It annoys the crap out of me that when you tune into the CBC News and they talk about this looming trade dispute, they're only talking to people who are upset and who want Canada to go full bore and elbows up and all this garbage. They only talk to those people. There are individuals out there, plenty of them, who are not all in on this. And yet they won't talk to them. If they do talk to them, they'll seek out the most regrettable person they can find. I'll tell you a little story. During the COVID era, a friend of mine, Henry Hildebrandt, some will know the name, he's pastor of a church called the Church of God Restoration in Aylmer, Ontario, southwestern Ontario, near London. And Henry's church kept meeting over and over again. They changed the locks on the building so they couldn't meet any there. And then they started meeting on their lawn. Then they set up a tent and had revival meetings, and they had 1,000 people coming out. I was there. And Henry, God love that man, he, set me up with some members of his congregation, and my family stayed with strangers during COVID when we're all supposed to die. The lying messaging was over the top. And Henry ended up in a CBC newscast, and what they were talking about, that particular jurisdiction, and I'm trying to remember the name of it, Malahide County or something like that. It's close to Malahide County. Had one of, if not the lowest vaccination rates in all of Ontario. And so they did a news piece on it, and they mentioned that Henry Hildebrandt and his contrarian stance was likely a strong contributing factor. Then they spoke to the Malahide Township chief medical officer of health, and this woman gave her, side of, her expertise into why everyone should roll up their sleeve and comply with getting the jabs. Then they spoke to a local doctor who echoed the same sentiments. Now you have two professional doctors, and then they offered the contrarian point of view, and they talked to Henry Hildebrandt, who's a pastor. He works in construction and as a real estate agent and as a pastor, and he doesn't have a medical degree. And then the other individual they talked to was an Eastern European immigrant, who I'm assuming, based on his accent, he sounded like he was from Russia, the former Yugoslavia. He had the different way, he talked with that Eastern European pronounce every syllable. And he had a young kid who was probably 2.5, 3 years old, who he was hanging by, swinging around and climbing all over his dad. And they said, why haven't you gotten the vaccine? He goes, well, I hear a good thing, a bad thing, and I just don't know yet. They decide that I think I wait a while, because there are people say get it, and the other certain saying no, it's better wait. And that was the individual they went to. Like, they couldn't go to a doctor, Dr. Makis. They couldn't go to Dr. Byron Bridle at Guelph University, one of Canada's leading vaccinologists. They couldn't go to Dr. Francis Christian. They couldn't go. There are tons of Canadian doctors who had a contrary view, but that's the way CBC operates. That's called straw manning. You want to, the argument that you want to diminish, you take someone who's unqualified to offer an opinion on it, rather than taking a highly qualified individuals in the medical field. It was ridiculous. And the media in this country is garbage. The mainstream legacy media. Danny is writing that I read a book recently called The 14th Reinstated by Bryce Towsley, a novel in which the 14th Amendment is reinstated. Your thoughts? You'll have to remind me I know the 13th Amendment. 13th Amendment was the abolition of slavery in the United States, with a little caveat: we can still enslave you if we put you in jail, find some excuse to incarcerate you, and then we can make you a slave again. I forget what the 14th, and I don't want to Google it right now. So if you don't mind writing it, by the time I get to it, and it could be a while, I don't think it'll be that long. Koji Malik is writing or saying something doesn't make it true. Bingo. Obviously. Trudeau said, and the campaign material that the Liberals put out in 2015 said that we're going to run small deficits for the first 3 years of our mandate, but by year 4, we will restore the budget to balance, because, as Trudeau famously said, budgets balance themselves. And for what it's worth, that was taken out of context. What Trudeau actually said, and I'm paraphrasing, he said that it's the government's job to create an economic climate that will allow, growth in the economy, and that if you do that, the budget will balance itself. But he was wrong on both counts. The budget doesn't balance itself, and it's not just about creating a robust economic climate. You also still have to watch the nickels and dimes. You just can't spend like a drunken sailor, which is what Trudeau has done since he's been prime minister. And for the last 4 years, he's had Mark Carney advising him as we've been going over a cliff. And now I gave a warning. I got some pushback from people on here, because I attract a lot of Trudeau haters, and preaching to the choir. I'm no fan of Justin Trudeau either. But I said that if Mark Carney, I made the prediction Mark Carney is going to win the leadership, and I said my fear is that he will be able to resurrect liberal fortunes sufficiently to knock the conservatives down to a minority situation, or possibly even resurrect liberal fortunes enough to win an election. And no, I had a lot of comments, people saying, no, that'll never happen. That's impossible. Canadians are done with the liberals. And what we have seen is that liberal polling has gone up significantly to the point where they've been pretty much within the margin of error, basically neck and neck, liberals and conservatives. And we have to remember that the liberals in the last two federal elections, 2019, 2021, in both cases, they lost the popular vote to the conservatives. They only got like 32 point something percent. The conservatives actually polled slightly higher in the popular vote, but the conservative vote is very inefficient because they'll take 60% of the votes in Alberta. In some ridings, they'll get 70-80% of the votes. In rural Alberta and Red Deer, they'll get 75-80% of the vote. But it only takes one vote to win. You only need to have first past the post. You only need to have one more vote than whoever came in second. But they don't get one more vote. They get 12,000 more votes than the second place finisher. And those 12,000 votes would help out a lot in a Toronto area riding. And it's just overkill in Red Deer, Alberta. And this is, I believe, a quote that Danny is putting up. I believe it's Voltaire, famous French philosopher. I may not like or agree with what you say, but I will defend to the death your right to say it. And that is classic liberalism. Now it's become conservative. It's the liberal side that is now advocating to limit or restrict free speech and who gets to decide. We have a piece of legislation that died with prorogation when they suspended Parliament. And I'm trying to remember the name of the bill. I think it's Bill 163, Bill 16. I forget the numbers. Every bill has a number attached to it. Bill C this, C that, and then a number. But they call it the Online Harms Bill. And it would censor speech online if an unelected panel of appointed individuals determine that, we don't, that's a harmful statement. And they could conceivably say that stating the basic fundamental reality that there are two genders, that there's male and female, that could be deemed to be harmful. And you're not allowed to say that in Canada. That could happen. This is the liberal mindset that we're living with now. That used to be the domain of the conservatives. Conservatives were often the ones looking to ban books like Catcher in the Rye, J.D. Salinger's famous novel, or Harper Lee's To Kill a Mockingbird, or Slaughterhouse-Five by Kurt Vonnegut Jr. It was the conservatives who sought to ban books and limit free speech. Now it's the liberals. And it's a question of extremes. When you get to the extreme right, they want to ban books. Huckleberry Finn or whatever, and Catcher in the Rye. They want that book banned. They don't want anyone to be able to read it. Now, that's the extreme right. And it's the extreme left that does the same thing. The only thing is the extreme left has taken over the left. There's no more moderate left in the world. It's all, if you're left, you have to buy into the extremism. You have to buy into some obese guy who likes to wear naval, he got an admiral. This guy, what was his name? Levine, I think was his name. Who likes to pretend he's a woman. And you have to go with that. If otherwise you're not liberal anymore. No, well, if that's what liberal means, if being liberal means I have to be crazy, fine. I'm a conservative. I consider myself a moderate conservative because I do not agree with banning those books, any books, pretty much. Things should be age appropriate. There needs to be guidance. It's such a contentious, difficult issue to navigate. Let's see what's Kojay Malik. Uh, And yes, Kojay Malik said, yes, I did say that I used to be a liberal and now I am conservative, but I feel like my opinion, my views haven't changed. I've stayed here, but the ground has shifted under my feet. And now all of a sudden I find myself, I feel like I've been pushed, because I don't agree with unlimited number of genders. And I don't believe in, it used to be the anti-war crowd was the liberals. Now the liberals are the ones saying, we'll keep funding Ukraine until we bleed Canadians and Americans dry. Give them another 350 billion. Keep the war machine going. That used to be the conservative, the neocons were the big war guys, like Liz Cheney in the US. But now it's the liberals. And it's the conservatives who are advocating for peace. Likewise on the free trade front. I've mentioned this before. I did a video, I've done a few videos on it, where in 1988, liberals and the NDP, the left in Canada, campaigned vigorously against entering into a free trade agreement with the United States, recognizing that when you cede your economic sovereignty to a country that has an economy more than 10 times bigger than your own, that at some point the political sovereignty is going to disappear as well. And the liberal side fought against free trade. Now you have it's the flip side in the United States. Now you have a conservative president, Donald Trump, who's advocating what used to be the liberal side, protecting American jobs and American interests. Anyway, and Danny was also in the military, uh, Highlanders, and anyone in the military, regardless, they have differing levels. There's confidential, secret, top secret, and then there's a couple more beyond that. And I think I had top secret, but whatever. No, it's just because I was in communication centers, ComSense. Danny did a 300,000 person walk in Montreal during COVID, shoulder to shoulder, a super spreader event, yet crickets, no one got sick. The biggest wake up call, I thought, that what should have been a wake up call for the entire world was the fact that I think it was in May that the George Floyd, and that was a tragic event. No matter which way you cut it, I don't care about getting into the minutia of the details. George Floyd, when a human being loses his life, that's not a good situation. And then before George Floyd, Canadians and Americans, but especially here in my country, we were told, stay home, stay safe, don't go outside. There was a kid in Ottawa who went out and was just playing basketball in his driveway, or at the end of his driveway, shooting hoops outside alone, and he got a ticket for like $600, $700, $800. Outside alone, getting fresh air, exercise, shooting basketball, and he was cited for being out of his house. And then, so that was the reality before the George Floyd incident. Then the George Floyd incident happened. And all of a sudden, you had hundreds, even thousands of individuals, including Justin Trudeau and Doug Ford, going out and walking shoulder to shoulder with people. And it's like, well, wait a minute, I can't even have 3 people over in my backyard, and now we can have hundreds of people marching down the street. What? But the I don't know how to explain it, but it's that fight or flight. It's that, the higher thought process. That's why people sit there and they wear a mask when walking into a restaurant, and then they sit down and go, okay, good, I'm at the seated position. Viruses don't touch you when you're sitting. I'm like, what? This is brain dead stupid. But that's what we had to endure. Let's see what Danny's writing. Trudeau will need a security detail for the rest of his life. He can go live somewhere else where people don't know him. John is writing, so Trudeau technically didn't sign a resignation. No, he did not. Yes, he stated it is. Go back and check the video. Don't take my word for anything. And I don't say that. I just you need to fact check things. And there's a tendency when you believe something, when it caters to your biased point of view, that's when you most need to fact check, because we always have a tendency to fact check those things with which we disagree. We hear Justin Trudeau say, we hear Mark Carney saying that, Brookfield moved their head office down to New York City, but that was after I resigned. And then we check, is that true? Then we'll check, because I hate this guy, Mark Carney. Oh, no, he lied. And we find out, we fact check it. But it's even more important to fact check things when you agree with it. Because what happens is when you spread information and it turns out to be demonstrably false, it weakens your voice. Because people go, oh, yeah, any port in a storm. He just spreads crap around because he hates Trudeau, or he hates Trump, or he hates Biden, or he hates whoever. Gordana's writing, I also watch Rebel News. I like them a lot. To be honest, I have met Ezra Levant and David Mendes. I was at a protest in Whitby, Ontario in December. I think it was December 7th, 8th. Whitby, Ontario. The Democracy Fund was the name of the group. And there were like 700-800 of us meeting in a college auditorium indoors. Nobody vaxxed, nobody wearing masks, acting like normal. And I met Ezra Levant and David Menzies there. Menzies did not impress me in the least. Ezra Levant, I honestly, with my own personal opinion, is very much controlled opposition. When Trudeau had a boxing match when he was running for the Liberal leadership race, he had a charity boxing event with Patrick Brazeau, who was a sitting Conservative senator, and he beat him. I think it was rigged. I think it was a setup. I think Brazeau was paid to take a dive, to lose to Trudeau, to vault Trudeau, to give him, positive press. Because before that, people were saying, well, yeah, he's Pierre Trudeau's dad and everything, but and it helped give him a lot of positive press. And that event was covered by Rebel News, and the fashion in which they covered it, to my mind, it reeked of a staged event. That's just my opinion. I can't prove it. No one's ever going to admit it. But I think Patrick Brazeau took a dive. And Gordana, got another person from St. Kitts. I always say it that way, St. Catharines. I'm not dead. Bring out your dead. Bring out your dead. I'm not dead yet. If you are receiving this transmission, you are the resistance. Good line. And Danny, one of Danny's favorite quotes from the Bible. You got to give the chapter and verse reference for this. Book, chapter, verse. I forget, because I can never keep it in my head. Is it Ephesians, Philippians, Corinthians? For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. And Jesus is king. Get into relationship. Anthony Cyr, on a note francophone. Cyr is very much a French last name. Anthony, though, not so much. It would be Antoine. The WEF to install the next dictatorship tomorrow. I'm guessing that's what you meant to write. Because I do that all the time. I start to write tomorrow, and then my hand, I hit the wrong button, and then my pinky hits the dang enter button, and I'm like, we all do it. Denny writes, in a tweet, Trump said more or less, Trudeau is doing everything to stay on, and it's pathetic. Like I say, I would be surprised if Trudeau were to try to hang on to power, but goodness knows, I would not fall off my chair, and I'd actually like to see it strictly for the entertainment value. But I think the only way that could happen is if there was a major event, if there was something catastrophic, something that would preclude the ability to, we can't focus on transitioning power from me to the new leader because things are too chaotic right now. I mean, but look, we've got EB in British Columbia saying we're going to, slap large tolls on, increased costs for trucks going up into Alaska. We're not going to sell you our nickel. Dougie is going to increase costs on Michigan, New York State, and maybe Vermont. I forget the three state. Michigan for sure. We're going to increase electricity costs by 25%. Wow. This very much has the potential to turn into something more than just a trade dispute. The U.S. could flex its muscle, and it's got a lot more muscle than we have. I feel like we're being thrown at. And Claude Beaulieu, salut mon, on a plusieurs francophones. And yes, Canada, our leadership is pathetic. Mark Carney, Justin Trudeau, Dougie Ford. We that's the way it goes. Are you in the U.S., Claude Beaulieu? It's a very much a French name, but BDU, battle dress uniform, is an oxymoron. Very true, battle dress. I always liked full fighting order, and they would go full FFO. So full fighting order. Denny's asking Claude to explain. And I have by their words, believe them, writes, here comes the WFF stooge Carney. Any Canadian who votes for him are either filthy rich and will benefit from his corruption or just plain dumb. I think the shine is coming off the apple, for lack of a better metaphor. That's the best I can come up with. The shine is coming off the apple on Mark Carney. I think people have woken up. I think this, him getting caught lying to Canadians during their leadership debate, talking about saying, "Oh, the Brookfield move," but that was after I'd left, and we find out that no, Mark Carney, it was the board of directors voted and approved it back when, and Carney voted in favor of moving Brookfield, in favor of taking Canadian jobs and moving them down to New York City. And this is the guy who wants to be Prime Minister of Canada, and he takes a company for which he was the chairman of the board of directors, and he is at the helm when they're taking Canadian jobs and shipping them down to New York City. And this is supposed to, and he's the guy who wants to lead this country. Michael Ignatieff, just visiting. He was in England, then he's been in New York most recently. He probably likes being down in New York, working at the UN. And, hey, if I don't win, now I can go back and work at Brookfield, and I'll be based in a city where I prefer living. I don't like living in Canada. I like living in New York City. A lot of people do. A lot of people like New York. They like Central Park West, Central Park East, Central Park in general. Beautiful park. If you ever get a chance, go through it. It's like you've entered a world unto itself. You'd never know, you get into the heart of Central Park, you'd never know that you were in one of the world's largest cities. It's unbelievable, that place. David is writing, David Eby is a dictator. He was once head of the BC Human Rights Council. Now he spends his time trying to take as many as he can. I'm not in BC myself, so I'm not that dialed into BC politics, Ontario politics for me, far more than provincial politics anywhere else in the country. Only other province in Canada that I've lived in is Quebec. I was posted to Valcartier from 2011 till 2015. Ça, c'est la raison pourquoi je peux débrouiller pas pire pour un anglophone en français. I do speak French pretty good. And Danny is saying that amen with respect to by their words comment. And HM is also echoing that sentiment. And David something is saying EB is only attacking red states when it comes to liquor. You know, Kentucky bourbon. I personally myself, I'm not a drinker. Christmas, New Year's, I'll have a rye or a scotch or a beer. You know, I have one or two drinks and that's it. Strictly social. So I don't really care about the booze. And David is writing, Canada's only hope is an immediate election. Man, the only thing is, all the parties are singing from the same. You know, they're all singing from the same songbook with in terms of how to react to the trade war or this little trade dispute. They all want to go gangbusters. They all want to get elbows up and trying to the little mouse trying to take down the elephant. And it's not going to end well for Canada if that's the course of action that we're going to pursue. And it's very possible, in my humble, well, maybe not humble, but in my opinion, it's quite possibly, I'm not going to say that's definitively, what do I know, but it strikes me that this may all be by design. That when the COVID era happened and they brought in the vaccine passport, it was later acknowledged that the vaccine passport laid the digital groundwork for a digital ID, which we all know the WEF and the globalist types are all in on. They want digital ID. They want digital currency. They want all these platforms so that people are under basically 24 hours, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, surveillance, the surveillance state. And COVID and, the COVID Vax Pass helped lay that infrastructure. And now this trade dispute is furthering that agenda. Because the idea of the WEF, Great Reset Agenda, Agenda 2030, all these programs is to have a borderless world where you're not Canadian, you're not American, you're not European, you're a citizen of planet Earth, and you're surveilled, watched, controlled 24/7, 365. And a trade war is a great way to crash the economy. When economies crash, the population becomes even more herdable, even more easy to direct and manipulate. Look at what happened after the Weimar Republic. In the days of the Weimar Republic in Germany, their economy was so bad that individuals they got paid immediately after leaving work in paper hard currency, a wheelbarrow full of Deutschmarks, which they would go to the shops to spend immediately because the next day the value of their money would drop because inflation was through the roof. And we could be looking, I don't think I would never predict that things will get that bad, but they could get bad enough that this is what we may be looking at. And I'm here to tell you that if things do get that bad, if there is a flood of turmoil, uncertainty, you want to be in the ark. And the ark, right here. This is the Bible. If you can see that. My Oxford annotated study Bible, and I had it upside down. There you go. It's not a book. It is a library book, 66 books, the most hyperlinked library of books the world has ever known. And it is divinely inspired. That's a matter of belief. That's something that takes work. That's something that takes introspection. It's not easy. Faith is not easy. And I'll tell you, it's a lifeline, especially at times like this, because you can find joy even in all this turmoil. I'm getting yelled at on occasion on my stream now by people who are all in, that follow stickers on the floor, that wear a face diaper, that give me my next booster. and they get mad at me. It happened last night. I had a couple people call me an idiot and get educated and what have you, and I'm like, fine, whatever. And I can do that. It's easy because I am not my own. I belong body and soul. Let's read. David is writing, Rebel reported that of the 400,000 registered, these are the card-carrying Liberal Party members, 250,000 could not be verified. Wow. Wow. Now, I wish that would come across on the mainstream media. I'm not a big fan of Rebel News, but that's not to say that their reporting is false. That means 150,000 people will decide Canada's next prime minister. Obviously not democratic, and especially at a time such as this. Now, it has happened before. It happened, the first in my lifetime that I remember is Brian Mulroney was Prime Minister of Canada. He resigned as leader of the Conservative Party. Back then it was called the Progressive Conservative, but he was the Prime Minister of Canada. He resigned his leadership. The party held a convention. They elected Kim Campbell, and she became the Prime Minister without going to the electorate. Then, when the election came and she ran as leader of the party, the Conservatives were reduced to just 2 seats, and the Reform Party became the primary Conservative Party of Canada. Then it happened again in around 1984 when Justin Trudeau's dad, Pierre Elliott Trudeau, resigned the leadership. And again, they had a leadership convention, and John Turner was elected to replace, not replace, but to succeed Pierre Elliott Trudeau. And he became Prime Minister of Canada, even though he'd never been elected. And if you go to Ottawa, they have a gallery that has Sir John A. Macdonald, Tupper, Mackenzie King, Diefenbaker, Saint Laurent, Laurier, all of them. I can't name all of Canada's prime ministers, not even close. But anyway, you will find the pictures of John Turner and Kim Campbell, their official portraits, because they served in the office of Prime Minister of Canada. HM is writing at David FI. Makes me wonder if one is around the corner. Got a text yesterday from Polyev to go pick up my lawn sign. Oh, all the parties are gearing up. They know it's coming right away. The anticipation is that there will be an election called within a couple weeks. So a week or so for Mark Carney to take the reins of the Liberal Party and to become the Prime Minister. And then Mark Carney would, as the leader of the Liberal Party and the Prime Minister of Canada, would go to the Governor General. I think her name is Sinclair. Danny helped me out with this last time. Danny FE helped me out with it. And go and ask for a formal dissolution of the House of Commons for the purposes of having a general election. And then Mark Carney will have to actually run for a seat himself. My guess would be that he would run somewhere in Toronto in a relatively, well, in a safe Liberal area, somewhere right downtown Toronto, in a wealthy, affluent, Jack Layton style area where people like limo driving socialists. David's writing, talk to my BC Conservative MP on Wednesday. Everyone's getting ready for an election. David FI is further writing, why is it the Western leaders want war? Some Nordic PM said the other day that peace is more dangerous than war. Yeah, no kidding. Sorry, I don't like to swear, but I get it. WTF. Whiskey Tango Foxtrot. Say it that way. Why? Big business, big money. 1, 2, 3, 4. What are we fighting for? Now come on, Wall Street. Don't be slow. Why, man, this is war a go. Lots of good money to be made, supplying the army with the tools of trade. Just to hope and pray that when they drop the bomb, that it lands on a Viet Cong. It's an old Vietnam protest song. Country Joe Fish. If you ever watch the Woodstock Music Festival, you can see him singing it. See him singing it? Whatever. You know what I mean. hear him singing it. We all know, yeah, a lot of repeated message. Uh, there are millions of Canadians who are opposed to what happened to us during COVID, but I'm finding, there was a slow wake-up process for a lot of people, very slow wake-up process. They went along with everything for far too long. And now I find most people have woken up, smelled the coffee, and realized that, my gosh, I wish I'd stopped. I wish I'd never gotten one. And, I should, and then okay, maybe the two, but I should have never gotten another one. What do they call them? Boosters. I'm trying to be careful. You got to be careful with YouTube. I've had videos taken down before. I don't offer medical advice. I have opinions, obviously, everyone does, but I have no credentials to make suggestions or offer advice to anyone. So please don't take anything I say as medical advice. David is writing, all Trump wanted was a fixed border. And for what it's worth, David, I'm going to disagree with you here. I don't honestly think the rationale behind Donald Trump's actions has anything to do with fentanyl or illegal crossings of the border or anything like that. But in order for him to enact tariff legislation or tariff action without going through Congress, it has to be an emergency. And so he has to frame it within the context of an emergency. And the emergency is chosen to frame it under is fentanyl. Yeah. And that it's the same way we watched our rights in Canada get taken away from us bit by bit by bit. And the rights that that are enshrined in our Charter of Rights and Freedoms, and the pretext under which they were able to do it was they kept saying, "Well, it's an emergency. Well, we have a Charter of Rights and Freedoms guarantees me the right to bodily autonomy. Yeah, but it's an emergency. Do what we tell you. What? Constitution guarantees the right to freedom of assembly. Our churches want to keep gathering. Yeah, that's true. It does, but it's an emergency. We can do it anyway." So Trump wants to be able to initiate tariffs on products coming into the United States. Well, that requires an act of Congress. However, if it's an emergency, then he can act with executive authority. Just a swipe of a pen and he's done. So that the fentanyl thing, even if we shut it down to zero, he'd have to find another pretext because he wants to do it fast, circumventing the Congress. Order out of chaos. Ordo ab chaos, I guess. Is that Latin? Wow. So many messages. And John is writing, I knew Rob Ford allegedly took drugs. I don't think there's any question about it being allegedly. He did. He was a crackhead. But I did not know both have a check into it. That's all I'll say. There's no question. Try and get in touch with 57, 8, 9-year-olds who went to high school in Etobicoke, back in the 1980s. I forget the name. King's something Plaza was where they dealt out of. I for what it's worth, that when we left New York City, and for a few months, our family moved back to Canada before they called my dad back to New York. That short time we lived in Etobicoke, Daly Avenue. I only know it because I hear it talked about. Let's see. David writes, Trudeau has done nothing to alleviate any of the economic stress on Canadians. No, he heaps on more. Nothing. And that's with Mark Carney advising him. He could have paused the carbon tax. Nope. Instead, he is spending money and committing billions of our tax dollars. Florence, you think balancing the books and respecting things like bodily autonomy, and this is a sad thing. and that, engaging in critical thinking and not just going with the herd, the Florence is saying that's radical thinking. It's radical to think critically. It's radical to question. You're just supposed to go blindly along. If you don't go blindly along, you're radical. And that's a scary notion to me. Very scary. That when people don't just blindly accept whatever is being fed at them. And we've seen this throughout history. Iraq has weapons of mass destruction. It's an imperative that the world stop Saddam Hussein and his weapons of mass destruction, which are a major threat to world peace and security. Do you remember that? The invisible weapons of mass destruction? That Colin Powell went before the UN with a video presentation and he proved it. Proved it. Then if you want to go to the sticking with the United States, when they talked about the fact that, the justification for the Vietnam War and the falling dominoes, if North Vietnam, an evil dictatorial regime invaded the sovereign democratic southern Vietnamese peninsula there, and we have to go defend it. Have to. Otherwise, the dominoes are going to start to fall. And next thing you know, Malaysia and Singapore and South Korea, it's just going to be, they're all going to tip communist. And next thing you know, the Red Menace will be on our doorstep. And as we all know, South Vietnam lost that war. The US pulled out. Malaysia, still democracy. Singapore, South Korea, these dominoes they talked about never fell. You've got to be a critical thinker in today's world, otherwise you're going to get hurt. How many people are coming down with celiac disease and other autoimmune conditions, and we don't know why. Just don't know why. And those of us who are fine and healthy and no problems didn't comply with groupthink. So anyway, that's the thing. Being a critical thinker in an Orwellian type world becomes, you're a radical. Anyway, Trudeau killed Canada. There's Shrunian. All good, Denny. Yeah, just no realistic. I wish I got to these messages as they came up, but fair enough. Okay, I'm getting the 14th Amendment guarantees equal protection under the law, citizenship, and due process for all people in the United States, ratified 1868 after the war. Now you got to remind me what the question was with respect. Are you talking about repealing the 14th Amendment? If that's the case, that sounds like the legal precept of habeas corpus, where you can't be incarcerated without being told the reason why. They have to show you the charge. And then you have to be given due process. You have to be legal representation. If you eliminate the 14th Amendment, that's tantamount, to my mind, reading that, it's tantamount to a declaration of martial law. Bye-bye democracy. David F.I. is writing, poly markets still have the C's way ahead of the L's. They were right on the U.S. election when all the polls were saying neck and neck. Okay. My own personal opinion, I was wrong. I thought they would move heaven and earth to keep Donald Trump out of the White House. But I also think Elon Musk is a Trojan horse. And that, we'll see what happens. Sharunian's writing from personal experience. Jagmeet Singh is the worst politician, worse than Trudeau if prime minister. I don't think we have to worry. They haven't got a hope in, they haven't got a snowball's chance in Hades, the NDP, of forming a government. So it's a moot point. Dr. Rachel, oh yes, when I was talking about the guy who likes to wear women's naval uniforms and pretend to be a woman. Dr. Rachel Levine, probably Rick, whatever. I don't care about the name, but don't ask me to call you a woman. Benny Wirtz is here and saying, Carnage Carney, good name. I like that. I haven't heard that before. Carnage Carney might win the Liberal hack party leadership, but he will get his lying ass kicked sky high in the upcoming election. I hope you're right. I hope you're right. But the thing is, Mark Carney, I, I, I'm not predicting that he'll win, but I'm not going to dismiss the possibility that he could. I think the power of the media is still pervasive. So I'm going to get through the last few messages if I can. I'm going to ask you to stop filling the. I normally don't do this, but stop filling the live chat, please, so that I can get to the end and wish everyone a good night. Eat Me is writing exactly like in the States. Warhawks used to be the Republicans and the Dems were all for peace. Everything flipped. Yeah, it used to be the Democrats against the war in Vietnam. I mean, by the time we got to 1975, Richard Nixon had became president in 1968, reelected in 1972. Big on the war, got the Smothers Brothers kicked off the air for their anti-war rhetoric, and stuff like this. And the liberal left were the ones protesting. They were the Michael Stivics, all in the family. And Archie Bunker was the Richard Nixon, Republican rah. And now everything's turned around. And Brian Van Derkley, a big no thanks to something. David, yep. How the acceptance of BLM marches, Ryan. Yeah, I'm way behind. Hank Holiday's here. I'd just like to say hi because Hank's down in the great state of Texas. I like seeing Americans come on the station. I like varying perspectives. I love the fact that there are people here from BC, from Quebec, from all parts of Canada, from the East Coast, from the West Coast, Americans from the South. We've got Brett Skinner. Haven't seen him tonight, but he's from great state of Wyoming. Love my American friends. Love my American friends. It's a lot that I like about the United States, but like everything, it's not perfect. Nothing in this world ever is. Let's see what's being. Oh, and the quote for these are spiritual battles in the heavenly realms. It's from Ephesians chapter 6, verse 12. Do not fight battles of flesh and blood, but this is spiritual warfare in the heavenly realms. Blessed is saying, why don't Canadians right now go to the leftist media with truth and respect, show redacted gas bills, show tent cities, ask liberals about the books in the school libraries, show house prices. Canadians, one thing I'll tell you is Canadians were very compliant. Canadians don't like to rock the boat. You have to remember the United States, I'm assuming you're an American. Your country was born out of revolution. Canada was born out of peaceful transitional negotiation. And it's in Americans' DNA through the history. And you learn it, starting in grade school on through high school. And then, if you go post-secondary, you can get into things like what do they call them? What do they call those papers that were going back between Hamilton and Adams and Jefferson? I forget the words. I forget the name of the papers. It's the something papers. But at any rate, we have a different history, and we are far more compliant. And a new name, Patra. Canada is not choosing the next prime minister tomorrow. Yes. No, they are choosing the next prime minister, because once Trudeau vacates the leadership, then the new leader automatically becomes prime minister of Canada, because in Canada, we do not elect the prime minister directly. The prime minister is whoever happens to be the leader of the party with the most seats in the House of Commons. It's basic civics, Westminster style of democracy. So that's how we got John Turner. John Turner is a former Prime Minister of Canada. Kim Campbell, former Prime Minister of Canada. Never elected to the office of Prime Minister, but they did serve as Prime Minister by virtue of being the leader of the largest party in our House of Commons. Check into it, Patra. The media would never air that. Central Park in New York, 843 acres. Yeah, it's massive. I've been through it. Robert Lewis, vote conservative in all elections. Right now, I think it's your best bet. But we'll see. We'll see. The proof is in the pudding. Now, I did watch Pierre Poilievre being interviewed by Jordan Peterson, and Peterson put a question to him, basically, why should Canadians believe you? Well, why should they trust you? Politicians lie all the time. What are you going to do to prove to Canadians, assuming you win? And Poilievre said the first thing I have to do, first order of business, or one of the very first orders, has to be the cancellation of the carbon tax, and obviously not replacing it with something else. Like right now, it's a carbon tax placed directly on the consumer, but then they could bury it within and have companies pay it, have producers pay it, and then it just gets buried into the cost. And you can't do either one of the two. You got to get rid of that carbon tax, because Canada, with our boreal forests and our woodlands, is not a net contributor to carbon in the atmosphere. Even if carbon is the big bad boogeyman they make it out to be, we're a pipsqueak. We contribute nothing, basically, to global carbon emissions. We've got China and India. Every time we take 100 metric tons out of, stop producing 100 metric tons, China and India add 10 times that much with every coal-fired plant that they're opening up to fuel their growing economies, while our economy goes in the toilet. Cheap energy is a great way to drive economic growth. I want to believe if Pierre Poilievre gets in, the temperature will get lower, and there may be leveler heads at the bargaining table. I openly speculate as to whether or not having Pierre Poilievre, as our Prime Minister, would that lower the temperature with Donald Trump? Is he just going at Trudeau? I've said before, the ground is shifting under our feet, and the world is changing. And the potential for global conflict is very much top of my mind. I think there is very much. I'm not talking about next week or next month or even next year. I'm talking the next 3, 4, 5 years, a major global conflict, and primarily United States and China. You have the one waxing, China, on the rise, and waning the United States. I've equated in the past to the old Corleone family of the Godfather books and movies, or the book and the movies. The Corleone family is the United States of America, and if you know the movie or the book, the China is the Barzini family, looking to supplant the Corleones, looking to supplant the United States. Just saw a stat that Canada created a new net positive 1,100 jobs in February, and all were part-time, and that was below expectations. There's typically over the winter months, there are people who are seasonally laid off, construction, trades, a lot of things shut down in the winter months. And then as we enter into the spring, things start ramping back up, but they're not ramping back up to the degree that they thought they would. A lot of this is seasonal unemployment. Some people who work in, farming industry, people who are pickers and things like that, they take a layoff, and now they start getting back to work to start getting the farms ready. I'm just going to buzz through the messages and see if I can get to the end, because there have been so many, and I really appreciate everyone who came on, everyone who chatted. Even if you attack me, even if you say, oh, you don't know what you're talking about, blah, 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 I would invite you to check into it. Does, the person left the comment with respect to they're voting for a leader, not the next prime minister. No, the leader of the Liberal Party, because the Liberal Party has the most seats in the House of Commons, they are also, they become prime minister automatically. I don't, I genuinely don't think Trump cares that much about the Canadian political landscape. I genuinely don't think so, but opinion. CW, Team Carney. Yeah, Team Brookfield in New York City, who takes Canadian jobs and sends them down to New York, and now he's going to fight for Canadian jobs. Yeah, Mark Carney's in it for Mark Carney, and he's in it for the WEF. He's there. He's carrying the ball for them. That chick with the glass, the only two I know about are Chrystia Freeland, and and then there's a woman who's a former MP, and then there's another guy, and those other two don't matter. All the votes are going to go to Chrystia Freeland and Mark Carney, and Mark Carney is going to win in a romp. My guess is first ballot. They have a ranked ballot. You have to pick first, second, third. So you got four names. Who's your first choice? Who's your second? Who's your third? And if on the first ballot, Mark Carney has, let's say he has 48% of the vote, and Chrystia Freeland, say, had 47% of the vote, and the other 5% was split between those bottom two. They would then drop those bottom two, and they would apply their votes to their second choices. But my prediction is Mark Carney will win first ballot, and it'll be a romp. Oh yeah, spring forward tomorrow. Thank you for the reminder, Danny. I knew that. So it's 11:56 on my clock right now, and it's 2 or 3 in the morning. You're supposed to push it forward an hour. So if you're going to church tomorrow, and if it's a 10 a.m. worship service, push your clock forward. You're losing an hour's sleep. And trying to catch, I can't get to the end of all the messages. Oh my gosh. Yeah. And Hank's a little tongue-in-cheek, thinking that the Americans, because he's down in Texas, should buy all Canadian oil and maple syrup. And we got another commenter I haven't seen the name for, Scott Kuniak. Trudeau failed the WF, so they're sending in Carney to finish the job. I don't think Trudeau failed. I think he did the job they wanted him to do. And we are the carbon they want to eliminate. No kidding. 666 carbon. Good night, guys. Yeah, good night to you as well. Yeah, don't worry. I knew you meant syrup. I don't know. And Hammy Hamster. Oh my gosh, talk about an old Canadian TV show. Hammy Hamster. 2/3 of the Liberal voters have been told they can't vote tomorrow due to ineligibility. They will only have 150,000 casting votes, including 14-year-olds, and that is true. Anyway, God bless everyone. I like to end my videos with a blessing. I know these are crazy times, and I know that the Bible is very much out of favor in the broader popular culture. I also think that's the reason why countries like Canada and the Western world, why we are so much in decline. We were always the ascending, but as we abandoned faith and as we abandoned our Judeo-Christian foundations, what's happened is we've started going down. That's a point I wish people would consider. And understand that when I give this blessing, it's an offering to get into relationship with the creator of all things. And you do that by getting to know his son, Jesus Christ, who went to the cross, John 3:16. So for God so loved the world, that he gave his only begotten son. And a blessing was given to God's covenant chosen people in the Old Testament. It's at the end of the book, it's at the end of chapter 6 or 7 in the book of Numbers. And the blessing is this: may the Lord bless and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you And may the Lord grant you peace. And even no matter what the political turmoil is, no matter what the trade war, or no matter what deadly virus comes along, know that you're covered by the blood of the Lamb of God, who takes away the sins of the world. Because you, Mark Carney, Justin Trudeau, Donald Trump, doesn't matter what side of the political aisle you are on, we are all broken, fallen, sinful creatures. And that's something you have to recognize. And when you can find peace in that recognition, knowing that you're not perfect, you're not all that in a bag of chips. Even though you, on your Facebook profile, you go and you try and show everyone your best life and what an amazing person you are. Look at yourself plainly in the mirror, and you know you've got scars. You know you've got sin. You know that you're not clean, but you can be made clean. So I'll leave it there. God bless. And tomorrow night, 9 p.m., I'll be talking to my old friend David from all the way down in the great state of Texas. He and I grew up, we spent 3-4 years growing up together in Glen Rock, New Jersey. So we'll be talking about this situation, just two guys. David is now a big scuba diver. I think he owns a scuba diving shop somewhere down in Texas. I've seen videos of him. He goes swimming with sharks. He's got more guts than me. I would not want to be, I don't care if it's a nurse shark. I don't know the difference between a nurse shark and a mako or only one I could probably tell really is a hammerhead because of the hammerhead. Anyway, good night all. Hope you tune in tomorrow for that. And last thing, George Antonios, Dr. George Antonios, my friend, um, from Lebanon originally, a man who grew up in Lebanon, speaks English, French, Arabic, Hebrew. He's multilingual, multi-talented. He has agreed. He said we're gonna try and set it up for this coming week. So there we go. And Whale Oil wants to know if David swims with whales. You know what? Come out tomorrow night, 9 p.m. And remember, that's an hour ahead. That'll be 6 p.m. on the coast. But I wonder if he knows what whale oil beef hooked is really in reference to. I love how you get me to swear. Anyway, God bless all. I'm going to hit the end stream button and then confirm, and hope to see you all tomorrow night. Hit like, hit subscribe. Always appreciate y'all. Love you. Bye.